5, 4. Up-leveling corporate culture, one conversation at a time.
This is the Corporate Cliche Podcast. If you were to clean your closet and organize it, that's great, right? But then if someone was constantly adding clothes to your closet, you would not be able to keep it organized. Mm-hmm. That's what happens to us every single day. And I see it at work all of the time, where my priorities are not my own.
No.
And so many people are throwing priorities in our to-do list that it's impossible to keep up with unless we evaluate, eliminate, and execute the most important vital few.
Oh my gosh. And I love that you brought corporate back into this because it's so true. Like in corporate, it always feels like your tasks, your priorities, and even your goals are not your own. It's how your goals roll up to your managers and how your managers roll up to their managers and so on and so forth until you get to the C-suite. So yeah. I love that he points out that you can take your power back by going through this process. And hi, team. Welcome back to the Corporate Cliche Podcast. I'm Jess.
I'm Jen.
And together, we're here to have those water cooler conversations on what it's really like working in corporate. Now, Jen, if you would have asked me 20 years ago if I thought I would be an avid reader as an adult, the answer would have been an astounding, absolutely fucking not. I used to hate reading. Yes, I used to hate reading. I think it really just came down to I hated doing what people told me to do, and I didn't have books that I enjoyed, really. I always had to read books that my teachers or, whoever were forcing me to read for school. But I have since come into my own as an adult, and I'm happy to report that I just absolutely love reading nowadays. I have this quote that I wanted to start the episode with, which is, stories are like footpaths of the gods. They lead us back and forth across time and space and connect us to the entire universe, to people and beings we never see but whom we feel exist. And that quote comes from an author, Batty Ratner, in the book In the Shadow of a Banyan Tree, which takes place in the Cambodian War in the 1970s that I read not too long ago. But yeah, as a kid, I hated reading because I didn't read anything for fun. And it honestly wasn't until Harry Potter came around where I had my first experience of really being transported into a different reality, so to speak, and just being totally submerged inside a book. And ever since then, I really have loved reading.
I love Harry Potter too, and I was kind of the opposite, where I loved reading as a kid. It was my escape. Now I find that I have zero time to read. If anything, it's, an audiobook.
Yeah, for sure. I actually started reading as a young adult again, and then I went through a 10-year lull because let's be honest, when you have little kids, it's who the fuck has time to read?
I know.
When you have a newborn and a toddler screaming in the house. But I have made kind of a switch, and I actually love to read nonfiction. It sounds boring, but I love to learn, and you really learn a lot when you read a nonfiction. And especially, well, it's not nonfiction. I love to read a good historical fiction because I was raised in the typical public school system and didn't get exposed to a lot of world history, let's put it that way. So I love to read a good historical fiction about something that I wasn't aware of. So Jen, I'm curious to know, what's your favorite book?
My favorite book of all time is tough. If I had to pick one, at least for right now, it would be Warbreaker. It's a novel by Brandon Sanderson. It's a standalone. It has everything I love in terms of fantasy, which is my favorite genre. It has science behind the magic. It's so freaking good. I love it.
Great. I'll have to add that to my list. And that question...
I know you have a long list.
I do. I have a never-ending notepad of books to read, and I have it broken up into nonfiction, fiction, and now I have a podcast book section. So it's never-ending, and it never gets shorter, but that's okay. And honestly, that question, what's your favorite book, always makes me laugh because that's such a tough question. Have you seen the new Dungeons and Dragons movie that
Oh,
came
I
out
love it.
last
In
year.
fact, my son and I watched it last weekend, and it is hilarious every single time I watch it. It has nothing to do really with the game, but
Yeah.
so fun. I love it.
It's one of those movies that if we have nothing else to watch, we'll definitely turn it on because it's fun, it's adventurous,
Yeah.
it's full of, the fantasy. But I love the part where they go to the graveyard of that battle that happened like 100 years, and they use that spell where they have to ask all the
Like, wait,
corpses
you
three
didn't ask me another
questions.
question. Yep.
But yeah, they ask the one corpse what's his favorite book, and he can't re-die
That's a
because he
tough one.
can't answer the question.
Yeah.
I relate to that because there's so
No,
many good
dude,
ones.
I love it. Yeah, like books are such an escape for me. Like again, I love the fantasy genre for sure, but I remember reading Harry Potter and I read it through in a weekend. Like I get really immersed. I love to read from start to finish, like cuddle up on the couch, by the fire, focus in, it's just pure bliss for sure. I love
There's
it.
nothing better than like my all-time favorite thing to do on the weekends is stay in bed, have
Yeah.
my nice soft cuddly blanket, and then have a nice hot cup of coffee at my nightstand, and then just spend the morning reading. It's just such
I
a
love that.
relaxing state. I love how it just really transports you into a different reality, especially if you're really sucked in, or just expands your brain. I love that feeling of
Yeah.
I can like feel my brain growing sometimes when I'm reading a nonfiction. So
I love it. I'm envisioning you curled up in bed. I'm literally on a Saturday morning playing like Fortnite or a video
Okay.
game. So you're cuddled up and I'm just like getting out my stress and aggression for the week in a shooting game.
yeah.
Okay, are you big into fantasy? I guess I should ask.
Not really. I will read a fantasy book, but I don't like fiction. Like fiction is not always my favorite genre, so I don't
Okay.
always read fantasy.
Well, if you're going to pick up a series, my favorite of all time is called Sword of Truth by Terry
Okay.
Goodkind. And we need to have him on the show one day. That'd be amazing. But
It's going on the
it's,
vision board.
yeah, it's my absolute favorite. It has magic, love story, political commentary. It's absolutely incredible. So Wizard's First Rule is the very first book. That one is, I don't know how many times I've read it, many times. But Faith of the Fallen is also really good. So add those to your list as well.
Okay. I will do that for sure. If I'm going to read a fiction, I'm really into space operas right now. I'm not going to lie. There's
That's so
something
awesome.
about a good space opera. Like I'm in the middle of the Expanse series right now. I don't know if you've read any of the Megan O'Keefe books, the Velocity Vector books. They're so good.
No.
I'm a nerd. I'm a closeted Star Wars nerd, and I've read many Star Wars books at this point. I don't know what it is about space. Terrifies me in real life, but a good space opera is like
That's
so
so
good
rad.
to me. Yeah.
And I know you're a Game of Thrones fan. I
Yeah.
read every single one of those books. I'm still waiting on the final book, George, for the record. It's driving me insane, but
Like many others.
they are
feel that way.
incredible. Like if you think the show is good,
Yeah.
the show is nothing compared to how good the books are.
Okay.
Like, I mean, they did what they could, but they did not do it justice because how can
Yeah.
you truly do it justice? But Game of Thrones is awesome.
I read
Yeah.
the first one and I made it about 100 pages into the second one. And I got to this part where Catelyn's talking to, I don't know if it's her uncle or her brother. And it's like 100 pages
Yep.
of Catelyn just having this dry, boring conversation.
descriptive.
And it just was just so boring.
That was The Hobbit for me. Like Tolkien is so descriptive, but I actually
Okay.
think George R. R. Martin does such a better job at describing, like making things very real and descriptive, but not going overboard. So I'd say dive back in, give him a
Yeah,
chance.
I will. I'm going to. We're slowly acquiring all the paperback, not the tiny paperbacks. Like we have like the bigger version. We started reading some occasional books together. So last year we read The Hobbit together. I had never read it. He's read it
you
before,
read
and
Lord of
now
the
we're in the
Rings?
middle of Fellowship of the Rings. And I'll tell you what.
Describing the hillside for
no,
35 pages.
Andy Serkis does the Audible version.
Oh, okay.
You know
Oh,
who
that's
Andy
fun.
Serkis is?
Yeah.
He plays
Gollum.
Gollum.
Yep.
He is hands down the best audiobook narrator I've
bet.
ever listened to. And he does all the voices. And yeah, he does all the voices. And the part where
That's amazing.
Bilbo comes into the cave for the very first time in The Hobbit, like where he finds the ring. With Andy Serkis playing Gollum
So
in
dramatic.
your ear, it was so much creepier than it would have been if I had just read it straight out.
Yeah,
I
that was a
can't
creepy
recommend those books listening to them on Audible enough because it's fantastic.
That's
It's
cool.
fantastic.
Yeah, I haven't heard those
Yeah.
on Audible. I've actually read. Yeah, They were very hard to get through for me though. That's kind of like
Yeah.
House of the Dragon even. House of the Dragon is a little harder to read because
Okay.
it's more of like a historical account that might be
Okay.
slightly biased by different narrators and
Okay.
historians, but
Does
and then
it
they
jump
merge it
around
all together.
in time like the show does? Because the first time we watched
Yeah, I
when we
mean,
watched the first season of House of Dragon and it like skips 8
yeah.
years every time a new episode comes out, really kind of threw me for a loop at first.
Yeah. I mean, it's a historical account. It's basically a
Okay.
history told from the perspective of different historians. And so it's over that span of time. But what the show did is made some assumptions in tying some of those stories together to actually create the show. And so it's a perspective on those histories. But yeah,
Okay.
they had to kind of dive you into the action pretty quickly. So they had to escalate that time frame for sure, which
Okay. Okay.
I kind of liked and I kind of found off-putting. I wish they gave it
Yeah.
a little bit more time because those original actors were so good.
They were so good. But so once we figured out, oh, like these are the same characters, it's just moving so much further into the
Yeah,
future. I was like, okay, like that makes sense. But at first I was like, what is going on? I don't
I know.
understand. Like, where are all these
It's
new
hard to.
characters coming from? Who are these people? And it just took me some time to figure it out. But yeah, that's on the also on the list is all the Game of Thrones books,
Yeah, for
House
sure.
of Dragon. So we'll get there
And
eventually.
like you, I have a whole podcast list as well. Like I love business books. So
Hmm.
if it's not fantasy for me, it's like books for business or self-improvement. And I
Hmm.
just like adore taking my highlighter and marking up my favorite quotes and concepts when I actually have time to physically read a book, which is less and less as time goes on. So Audible is like my best friend that way. And even when I was in business school, I would literally like drive to work. I'd have, an audiobook on. Obviously, I'd like do my homework at lunch and then I'd have an audiobook on the way home because it was like the only way to do it for me. But I love it. I love learning and I love growing just like you.
Yeah, I love business books. I love self-improvement books. I actually have a pattern. So there's just way too many books out there and I
Yeah.
have way too many that I want to read, but I don't want to get stuck reading like a specific genre over and over again. So I actually pattern the books that I read. So I read a fiction, I read a
I love that.
nonfiction, I read a personal development, a self-improvement business book, whatever you want to call it. Then I also have a goal of reading one book from every country on planet Earth. So
That's
the
cool.
requirements there is it has to be by an author from that country and it has to talk or allude to taking place in that country and kind of like teach me about the culture of that country. So I could do fiction, nonfiction, personal development, and then a country book. So
I
that's
love
the
that. That's
patterns that I go.
incredible.
Yeah, I'm making good progress. I only read maybe like 4 or 5 country books each year, but I think I'm up to like 32 different countries that I've read
Wow.
books for. So that I actually
That's
just checked
impressive.
out my next book at the library because if you don't rent from your local library, you should definitely check it out. It's a great sustainable choice to book reading, and then it allows you to be a more conscious shopper onto which you want to weigh your bookshelf down with.
Yeah.
So I just checked out the next country I'm reading a book for is Jamaica. So I just
That's
checked
so
out my
cool.
Jamaica book for that. So yeah. So audience, if you haven't guessed already, today we're introducing our book club series. So as
Woo.
you can tell, Jen and I just love to read, and we want to share our most impactful books with you. We've read a ton of business books, a ton of personal development books, and we want this podcast to be impactful and empowering. So we're going to take those books, kind of have a book club, so to speak, and discuss the main points, the main highlights, the key takeaways, and then we also want to talk about how it relates to corporate and how you can implement some of those ideas into your own
Yeah.
corporate life. And today, our very first book we're going to be discussing is Essentialism, The Disciplined Pursuit of Less by Greg McKeown. So this was a
I
really
love
great
it.
book. If you, we're going to post a link in the show notes if you need your own copy. But yeah, we're going to break this book down. We're going to go over, we're going to talk about our favorite parts. We have some questions lined up and tell you everything you need to know about essentialism.
I love it. I'm excited for this. This will be fun. And we want all of you to follow along as well. So, like just said, get a copy or check it out from your local library, download it on Audible. But follow along with us or read it and then pause this podcast and come back to it, right?
Yeah, for sure.
So, I want to talk a little bit about the main message of the book. So, I'll just kind of read you a high level, but this book offers a systematic approach to identifying what's most important and focusing on it. The main message is that people often spread their energy too thinly across many tasks, which can lead to stress and overwhelm. Some tips from the book include focusing on what you're giving up when you say yes, being aware that everyone is selling something, accepting that saying no may mean trading popularity for respect, protecting your sleep time, and making time for play to help you see possibilities and make connections. And I love all of those.
I mean, let's be honest. Who has time to protect their sleep time? Because I definitely don't get enough.
Right. Here, here.
Yeah, the author, I really love how he breaks the book up into really three main phases. So the first phase that he goes over is the explore and evaluate. And he really poses the question, will this activity or effort make the highest possible contribution towards your goal? So he provides different tips and tricks on how to evaluate tasks and projects and things that are going on in your life to figure out what is contributing most towards those goals. And then the second phase that he goes over is the eliminate phase. So he basically outlines that it's not enough to simply determine which activities and efforts don't make the highest possible contribution. He really wants you to figure out that you still have to actively eliminate those tasks. Like you can't just be like, okay, these aren't doing anything for me, and then not do anything about it. And then finally, the third phase is the execute phase. So once you've figured out which of those activities and efforts you need to keep, you need a system to make executing your intentions and as effortless as possible. So those are kind of like the three main phases of essentialism.
Yeah, I love that. And I'm literally using this methodology in my life right now. So I'm going through this big purge phase, Mari conning my life and specifically my closet. So he literally talks about organizing a closet and how you apply this process. So I took him up on it, and I'm literally doing the exact same things. I'm evaluating like the clothes that I have in my closet. Do they fit me? Are they cute? Do I love them? Do they spark joy? Right? And then 2, eliminate the things I'm not wearing, or that don't fit, or that don't make me feel great. And then 3, execute, just getting it done. And it's such a huge job that I've put off for way too long. And this process is working really well for me. So the one thing that hit me super hard when I was doing it is this relates to priorities, right? Like he talks about how if you were to clean your closet and organize it, that's great, right? But then if someone was constantly adding clothes to your closet, you would not be able to keep it organized. That's what happens to us every single day. And I see it at work all of the time, where my priorities are not my own.
No.
And so many people are throwing priorities in our to-do list that it's impossible to keep up with unless we evaluate, eliminate, and execute the most important vital few.
Oh my gosh. And I love that you brought corporate back into this, because it's so true. Like in corporate, it always feels like your tasks, your priorities, and even your goals are not your own. It's how your goals roll up to your managers and how your managers roll up to their managers, and so on and so forth until you get to the C-suite. So I love that he points out this, that you can take your power back by going through this process. And I really love his explanation of essentialism. So essentialism is not about how you get more things done. It's about how to get the right things done. And I think that's a really key difference. We're in this society of just going, doing. But we need to kind of take a step back and realign on what the right things are to be doing. So it doesn't just mean doing less for the sake of less either. It's about making the wisest possible investment of your time and energy in order to operate at that highest point of contribution by only doing what's essential. You kind of always hear that if you work hard, you'll get a raise, but it's not necessarily about working hard. Working hard is important, but more effort doesn't necessarily yield those better results. Less but better or higher quality does yield those results. So I just really love that definition.
Absolutely love that. It's what impact can you make? Like what can you focus on that's most important, that vital few that really moves the needle? And too often we just do everything. And if everything is a priority, nothing is a priority.
I know. I love that saying because it's so true. And the other thing that I really loved about this book was how many practical scripted answers he provides. So I've read a ton of personal development and a ton of business books. And sometimes what I find is that they don't provide you any real ways to execute in your real life. And I really feel like he incorporated real world scenarios. He even includes like, hey, if your boss is this way, you can say no like this. And for somebody that's a people pleaser like myself that's trying to break those habits, having those scripted answers that my brain can fall back onto is super helpful. And then just to sum up my favorite moments, I really love how many spiritual and philosophical books he referenced throughout this book. He talks about the meditations of Marcus Aurelius, wisdoms of Confucius, the Tao, sometimes even the Bible. And I'm not a religious person, but I love how relatable he makes this to a vast amount of people. And then I read the physical copy. Like I said, I like to read and listen at the same time. And I love the illustrations in this book. They're big, they're bold, but they're also really simple and easy to understand. And I really love that.
Even the cover, I love the look of all of the crazy marks and then one arrow to like, this is what really matters. Yeah, Essentialism is one of my favorite business books that I've ever read. And I've read a lot. And it's not that it's some groundbreaking idea, but it applies to large corporations, to startup businesses, to life. And it's just a really good guiding philosophy. I remember reading it. I read it a few years ago as a part of our finance management team, and the CEO of our company at the time loved this book, referenced it often along with the 4 disciplines of execution. And he set up our company around the essential few. So our company had 3 of them. It was critical that everyone knew them. He would literally walk up to people's desks at the company at random and ask them what the 3 company's goals were so that everyone knew what they were. We were focused on it. We were working together as a team. And I loved that concept, just the simplicity behind it. It wasn't that we were trying to do everything. We were trying to do 3 very specific things. And everyone was very clear on that vision, which I think is really critical for any company, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I love this idea of having just 3 things to focus on because I work for a very large company and I do get confused on what is the priority here. I don't quite understand these really goals because I feel like sometimes when the C-suite sets these goals, they're very vague. And it's like, okay, that's great, but how do we actually do that? And that gets lost in translation. So I love this concept of having these simple 3 goals that everybody can understand, that everybody can repeat on command if needed to. So that's essentialism in a nutshell, really.
Yeah. Some of the most impactful concepts for me is that one, focusing on the essential few goals. So getting very clear on what they are. Ideally, limit them to 3, no more than that. The second is the concept of the whirlwind. The whirlwind is in your day-to-day grind, all of the things that take you away from what really matters, what's really important, and it will always be there. So it's getting to the root of what really matters to you and coming back to focus every single time. Otherwise, that whirlwind will just take you away. And 3, it's okay to say no. We all get in that trap of like wanting to do it all. At work, at home, in life, but if everything is a priority, again, nothing is a priority. So it's critical, like you say, Jess, if it's not a hell yes, it's a hell no. I'm still working on applying that one, but it's key. Yeah. And then the 4th thing for me is like needing space to think. And I actually have a space dedicated to thinking, and that was really important to me and a new concept when I read it. So I literally have a thinking chair in my office. Because so often we get caught up in that day-to-day that we don't have time to think, or we don't make time to solve problems or think about new ways to do things or really brainstorm the best way to tackle something or to come up with solutions. When we are little, we just spend a lot of time daydreaming. We get super creative and the world is just open with possibilities, and adults get in this routine and we close our mind to those possibilities. So I love that idea of opening it back up.
I love that. And I am trying to be a great living example of this. Jen, how many times do I text you when I'm on a walk and I'm like, all these ideas are coming into me? That's your creative download. Yes. Because the truth of it is I'm allowing myself time to think. We get into these daily grinds and this day-to-day routine and the muscle memory of, I got to drop the kids off. I got to go to work. I got to make dinner. I got to clean, do the dishes, blah, blah, blah. And you don't allow yourself time to think. And I love that he points that out. Hey, you need to give yourself a break, whether it's meditating or just sitting and allowing yourself to think or going for a walk, whatever the case may be. Just giving yourself that time is so valuable.
Yeah, no, I love it. And I wrote down a couple quotes that I really love from this book. The first one is, the life of an essentialist is a life lived without regret. So I know you don't believe in regrets, Jess, but I love that with this mindset, you're wholeheartedly pursuing what's important to you and minimizing that regret.
Yeah, for sure. And I mean, I don't believe in regrets, but I do believe in learning and figuring out the opportunities for growth in each situation. And I feel like that's what the essentialism way does is it says pause. You need to think about what you're doing before you do it. You need to make sure the time that you're using is going to be the most impactful. So it allows you to then turn around after the fact and say, hey, I tried here. I gave this the thought before I started. This is what I thought was best. And I'm an essentialist.
The second quote that I really loved was, the way of the essentialist means living by design, not by default. So often we get in the mode of going through the motions, stuck in the patterns of living life by default, right? I love that idea of being intentional about what you're choosing and creating that life you live by design.
I love that. Like we were just talking about, it just allows you to pick and choose what's important and what's not so you can live the life that you want to live.
Absolutely. So from my perspective, to sum it up, essentialism is about deliberately distinguishing the vital few from the trivial many, getting out of that whirlwind, eliminating the non-essentials, and then removing any obstacles because, as he says, if you don't prioritize your life, someone else will.
I love that. And one of my favorite quotes when I looked back at my notes is, this is a little bit longer than yours, so bear with me. But it's natural for humans to obsess over past mistakes, of feeling stressed about what may be ahead of us. Every second spent worrying about a past or future moment distracts us from what's important in the here and now. And I really love that because sometimes you have tasks that are really mundane and you kind of feeling unimportant with what you're doing. But I think that's partly because we're focused on what else we could be doing with that time. And focusing on the now brings value to your work, even if it's just updating another spreadsheet, putting in another formula. Focusing on what you're doing in the present moment allows you to bring value that you may have been missing out on before.
I think that's so true. Living in the now is something I'm actually trying to do, is like, what's the best decision I can make right now? What's the healthiest thing I can eat right now? What's the most impactful thing I can do with my time right now? And instead of trying to get overwhelmed by the larger scope of things, like having to have everything figured all out, it's like, what's that next step? What's that next right thing that I can do that's the highest impact right now?
Have you read The Power of Now by Eckhart Tolle?
Yes.
Okay, that's
so
a good one. I have it.
I read it last summer, actually.
Yeah, I read it a few years ago. And I actually just realized that I read Practicing the Power of Now, which is like more of the workbook.
The workbook, right?
Instead,
Okay.
and I didn't realize that, so I'm going to have to go back and actually read the real book, which is just as long. It's like 100 pages.
I've got it.
Like that,
Next time I see you, I'll give it to you.
Okay, cool. So, and part of this series, we thought it'd be fun to have some actual book club questions that we can ask each other. So we have 5 questions that we want to go through just to broaden our scope and have a better understanding of each other's point of view and how we digested and reflected on this book. So the first question we're going to discuss is, can any life lessons be learned from the story or subject? Was your outlook changed in a positive or negative way? And explain. So, Jen, do you want to go first or do you want me to go first?
Go ahead, Jess. You go first.
Okay.
Take it away.
Okay. So I mentioned earlier that I am a recovering people pleaser. Hi, my name is Jess. I'm a recovering people pleaser. So my biggest life lesson learned from this book, there were a lot, but this one was the highest impact for me, is really how to say no. This is really hard for me, especially in the workplace, but he gives really great advice on how to do it professionally. So the first step of advice he gives is separate the decision from the relationship. Denying the request is not the same thing as denying the person. Just means that that task or activity may not be aligned with what you need to do in that moment. And then the second step that he talks about when saying no is saying no gracefully doesn't have to mean using just the word no. Now we've all heard that saying, I feel like this point in my life, where no is a one-word sentence. I tell my kids that all the time. No means no. But for somebody like me, I feel uncomfortable if my manager at work was to say, hey, can you do this task? And I was just to say no. That makes me feel uncomfortable. So I love that he suggests using a phrase like, I'm flattered that you thought of me, but I'm afraid I don't have the bandwidth. Or I'd very much like to do that task, but I'm a little overcommitted at the moment. I love that he provides alternatives to just saying the word no.
Yeah. No, that's one thing that hit me really hard as well. I learned way too late that it is okay to say no. And like you don't have to qualify or justify it, but you don't have to give a lot of context or find an excuse. You can just say, that won't work for me, right? And I think that is something I've tried to really implement in my life the last few years. And it's helped because I think too often we sacrifice our own comfort to not let others down. But then in turn, we let ourselves down. And it's okay to not be an open book all of the time and also be respectful in the process, right?
Yeah. And he also points out that you need to focus on the trade-off. So a graceful no grows out of clear but unstated calculations of the trade-off. So what are you giving up by saying no? You may be passed over for something. He points out later in the book that being an essentialist means that people respect you, but don't always maybe want to include you because you may not win the popular vote at work because you're setting clear boundaries. And sometimes when people set clear boundaries, it rubs people the wrong way. And that's not your fault. That's a them problem. He tells people to remind yourself that everyone is selling something, whether it's an idea, a viewpoint, an opinion. Being aware of what's being sold when somebody asks you to do something allows you to be more deliberate in deciding whether you want to quote unquote buy it or not. And I think that is such a great way of looking at it because it's so true, especially in the workplace. People are trying to get you to buy into an idea or a project or a task. And so what are you buying when you say yes? And then making peace with the fact that saying no often it does require trading popularity for respect. Like I just pointed out, when somebody's asking for something and doesn't get it, his or her immediate reaction may be being annoyed with you or maybe being disappointed with you and even angry with you. And you know what? That's okay.
Yeah.
That's a them problem.
No, I love that. That's such a powerful statement, trading popularity for respect. It literally reminds me of the song Bossy by Khalees that I used to run to. That's like, you don't have to love me. You don't even have to like me, but you will respect me.
Yeah.
You know why? Because I'm a boss.
That could be the theme song for this book.
Yeah, I love it. No, let's take our power back, dude.
Yeah. Yeah. And just remember that a clear no can be more graceful than a vague or non-committal yes. So, and I'm going to pass on this is way better than I can try to make this work because you're being uncommittal, right? It's either a yes or a no. So be clear. You can give context if you feel comfortable. It's better than an uncommitted yes approach.
I agree. So true. And I need to be better at that for sure.
Yeah.
So this is a reminder for me, but it's so hard when you have an expectation of someone only to be let down. And I don't like doing that to other people. So I would rather know that it's a yes or a no versus planning on the yes and then getting a no last minute.
Yeah, 100%. One thing you and I have talked about is one of my biggest pet peeves in life is when somebody sets unrealistic expectations. Yeah. Because if you say yes, then you are setting that expectation that you can do it. And if you can't follow through with that, that is your fault, not mine for getting upset with you that you set that expectation and then couldn't follow through. So
yeah, good call.
And like I said, one of my favorite things about this book is he gives you scripted answers. So some examples of the scripted answers he gives to how to say no is the soft no, for example. So I'm consumed with XYZ at the moment, but I would love to get a coffee once XYZ is finished. Another example he gives is the awkward pause. So use a silence as a request tool. So if your partner, your friend or your boss even is like, can you do this thing? Using that awkward silence as a tool can be a really clear way to start the conversation that you're too busy to get those other things done or you're not willing to commit. And a couple others is let me check my calendar and get back to you. Gives you time to pause and reflect on those tasks. So you may not be saying yes, but it allows you to convey that you are interested, but you don't know if you have the time right now. He also encourages people to use email. He calls them bounce backs. Here in the US, we would set up our auto response. but explaining how you're currently using your time, which I have never done this, but I kind of really love it. Like if I'm working on a task, there are some times where I'm editing a video at work and it really takes a lot of time. Put your out of office on and be like, hey, I'm working on X, Y, and Z. I will respond to your email when I'm finished. Just sets those clear boundaries, and it also allows you to time block, which I really love. And then my all-time favorite one is yes. What should I deprioritize? So this shows that you're interested in the request, but you have a lot going on and you can't make it work. I love this one, especially when it comes to corporate. And Jen, I'm not going to lie, I used this on my husband the other week.
How did it go?
Actually, it went pretty well because I do the budget in our family, and he was wanting me to add something into the budget, which money isn't an unlimited source, right? So I didn't want to just dismiss him, even though I knew we didn't have the extra funds to make it work. So I came to him and I was like, okay, like I put it back in the budget, and then I wrote a list of things that I would have to remove in order for it to work. And I gave it to him and said, what should I deprioritize for monthly payments and from this list? And it turned out he didn't want me to deprioritize anything. So we removed said item out of the budget. So it actually worked really well. So
success.
Yeah. Thanks, Greg, for the tip. And then the last two are, you are welcome to X. I am willing to Y. So a great example of this is, you're welcome to use my car. I'm willing to make sure the keys are here for you. So if a friend asks you for a ride to the airport or for an errand or a favor, you can use my car to do those things yourself. Totally. I love that approach. And then another one you can use at work is, I can't do it, but so-and-so might be interested. Now, don't just go blasting your coworkers and giving anybody extra work. But if you know somebody's interested in that type of work or that type of task, this might be a good one for you.
Yeah, these are really great ideas. And the thing I love most in any scenario is tools. And so what we're hoping to give you, like Greg does so eloquently, is the tools to help you say no, or to help you in your day-to-day to reprioritize those essential few. So I agree. Saying no can be so hard. And I've become a little more comfortable doing this as a result of this book and just life experience, where you just, you don't give a fuck anymore. Like, I don't really care about your opinion of me anymore. When it comes to work, it's a little different because we obviously have a job to do, and we need a paycheck. But at the same time, in your life, like, it's okay for people not to like you or like your answers all of the time. Yeah. You do have to prioritize you and your mental health. And, but one thing I really love is, like, you're not just saying no to something, right? Like, you're saying yes to something that you value more. And that's absolutely key, right? It's not that you're just difficult. In some cases, if this is like a goal or a project, saying no could mean saying yes to your own needs, your own mental health, protecting your peace, or honoring those boundaries.
For sure. I really feel like this book, paired with the book Set Boundaries, Find Peace by Nedra Glover, that book covers more of setting boundaries in your personal life. If you have toxic family situations, toxic relationships. But this book also highlighted how to set boundaries in your business life or in your professional career. These two partnered together really helped and made an impact on me and how to feel comfortable with saying no to things and setting those boundaries in my professional life.
I love that book. You recommended it to me, so you're the reason I got it. And so we'll have to review that one in a future episode. But yeah, I agree. So many life lessons can be learned from this book. It had a positive impact on me at work. I know when we read it, this book brought our team closer, and we were aligned on focusing on what was truly important and impactful. And we spoke the same language. We would say, okay, what are the vital few that we need to focus on, or how do we execute on this? And knowing those shared goals really helped us achieve them. And, in sync, without having to go through that firefighting or juggle priorities each day, which I think is, again, that whirlwind that's going to take you away. Another thing that struck me in this book is when he talks about the word priority. And I loved this so much, and I think about it on an almost daily basis. So the word priorities did not exist before the 1900s. So the word priority actually meant prior thing, and it was singular. It wasn't until the 1900s that we made it plural, and started saying priorities. And it's ironic because we can't do a million prior things. We can only do one prior thing, and truthfully, only one thing at a time. Even multitasking, as I learned from college and brain and behavior, it's literally just you constantly switching back and forth from one thing to another in microseconds. And so that was so powerful to me that it should be a singular priority.
Yeah. And, I always had pride in myself for being a really great multitasker. But the older I get, the more I realize how beneficial it is to just focus on one thing at a time. Like bouncing back and forth doesn't produce quality work. It can allow you to get more things done, but it's not giving that time and attention that those details deserve. That's also where essentialism comes in and teaches you how to make sure you're focusing on just the one thing at a time, because it's going to produce better quality work.
Absolutely. I wrote down a couple other quotes too that I love.
Okay.
When individuals are involved in too many disparate activities, even good activities, they can fail to achieve their essential missions. And I love that so incredibly much. Another one is identify activities that fulfill your priorities. Then, he recommends, get rid of the rest. And how hard is that to do? Incredibly, but so vital.
It's so hard. I want to be able to do everything, and there's so many books to read, and there's so many things to do, and so much traveling to do, but you can't do it all. You can do anything, but you can't do everything.
Exactly. No, I really need to subscribe more frequently to this book, but it literally has impacted my day-to-day. So when I execute my daily tasks, I use his methodology. I'm a list maker, you know this, but I always have a list, and that list gets super long, right? But every single day I make a top 3 list. It's on a little sticky note, and it's in front of my face physically, so that when the whirlwind tries to take me away, I can come back to, okay, get back on track. What are the most important 3 impactful projects, the essential few that I have to get done today? And that varies day to day. One day it's going to be a different 3 than the next, right? That list is still there. That's my whirlwind that's going to take me away. But what's the most impactful thing I need to do today? And so I really love that. Everything else I can get done above that top 3 is a bonus. But I physically have to see it because, you'll get a ping from an email, you'll get a call, you'll get a text, you'll get a message, and you'll be constantly spinning around, but you have to go back to, okay, back on track. What are the most 3 important things that I need to get done today? What are the top 3 so that you can physically see it and refocus with your eyes and remind you of what you have to get done, regardless of what's swirling around you. So if those distractions are coming at all of you, that could be a really good way is what are your vital few? What are your top 3? When you immediately see that list, you're back on track to achieve those critical few goals.
Yeah, that's such a good approach too to your work to-do list. I'm also a huge list maker, and I actually use highlighters. So I go through my whole list every day and just highlight.
Yep.
But I have a color code system. Like
I was
pink
just
is
gonna
first
say,
task,
I love
orange
the
is the
colors.
second task, yellow is the third task, green is the fourth task, and blue is the 5th task. That's how I prioritize. Is I just chunk it into 5 tasks at a time. Okay, what is the most important in those 5 chunks?
I love that. All right, Jess, next book club question. Do you think the book was effectively organized? Are there any ways the structure could be improved?
I actually really do like how this book was organized. It was broken into 4 main sections. The intro paired along with the 3 phases that we went over earlier, the explore, eliminate, and execute. And then each section was built into one another, and he provided real world examples and practical advice on how to execute each step. So I really did enjoy how he had the book organized.
Yeah, same. I love a how-to guide, as you know.
Yes.
And so he says, an essentialist life centers around yourself, a routine, and a proceeding step by step. And I, who am a huge fan of process documentation, love the step by step. So I think he does a great job at just not only conceptualizing, because everything is helpful in theory, but he actually shows you how to execute on it, which I think is so helpful to understand, and gives you suggestions on how to think through implementing it in your life and in corporate. So I physically read the physical copy several years ago, then purchased the Audible, lost the physical copy, have purchased it since. But it's one that I've kept coming back to because it's so engaging. And For the audio version, the thing I love is that he actually reads it in his own voice. And so you can hear his passion. Plus, I love an English accent. So I'm a sucker.
It was easy to listen to for sure.
Yeah.
Awesome. Yeah, I agree with you. I keep coming back to it too. I feel like the way he has it structured is really empowering to then take that information and implement it into your daily life. So I'm here for it. All right, third book club question. Does the author criticize or admire corporate culture? Does he wish to preserve or change the way of life? Either way, what will be risked or gained? I love this question. As you know, we're here to change corporate culture one conversation at a time. And I really feel like this whole book was a criticism of the modern corporate culture, but he really presents valid reasons. One thing that I learned from this book that I didn't know before is that modern corporations were born out of the industrial revolution, when the entire reason for being was to achieve efficiency and mass production of goods, right? But these early managers looked to the military for guidance. The military, as you probably know, is a less than playful entity, and their inspiration still is an effect on companies to this day. The language that companies use in corporations, they talked about employees being on the quote unquote front lines, or company itself is a term for a military unit. So the fact that modern corporate culture was mirrored off the military just kind of blew my mind. Like, of course it was. Why didn't I think of that before?
And then they can control all of their little worker bees, right? Same with the school system, for the record.
Yeah, 100%. He points out two common patterns that typically emerge when teams lack clarity and purpose. And I love that he pointed this out, because I know I've seen this in my work life, Jen. I know you've seen this in your work life. So
On the front lines, day to day.
those two patterns are playing politics. So teams become focused on winning the attention of the manager. And then the other theme is it's all good, which is bad. If you didn't know, teams without purpose become leaderless. With no clear direction, people pursue the things that advance their own short-term interests and not necessarily the company's interests, with little awareness on how their activities are actually contributing to the mission of the business. So I really love that he points that out, because when people are working on teams, many disparate projects are at odds with one another. I've seen in my own life so many people unknowingly working on the same project, and it's really not contributing to the team's highest goods.
Absolutely. And he definitely believes we can do more for corporate culture by implementing essentialism. So I see this all the time, but corporate has too many silos, too many barriers to execution. He says non-essentialists seek solutions. Essentialists identify and dispel obstacles. How different would it be if everyone were working together to dispel obstacles, right? Break down silos.
Yeah, for sure. And I don't even know what that would look like in real life. What does it
I
look
know.
like to work for a company that doesn't have silos and obstacles?
know.
And I know in my own company, we're talking about breaking down barriers, but it's like, is that actually going to happen? Because I'm pretty sure that's just a wasted effort.
No, yeah, I see it all the time, right? That we spend so much time firefighting, and in corporate, everything is a priority. And so he says when those individuals are involved in too many activities, even if they're good, we fail our mission. And if corporate could take that to heart, it would be transformational.
Yeah, I just hate this firefighting environment of corporate that we're in right now, because people's lack of proper planning does not equal an emergency on my end. Your lack of proper planning isn't my problem, really, is what it comes down to. So
true. The next book club question, which is talk about specific passages that struck you as significant or interesting, profound, amusing, illuminating, disturbing, or sad. What was memorable for you, Jess?
There were so many aspects of this book that were memorable. I love that he brings Greek history into this book. So he talks about the ancient Greeks had two words for time. The first was Chronos, and the second is Kairos. So the green god Chronos was imagined as an elderly gray-haired man, and his name connotates a literal ticking of the clock. It's chronological time, right? The passing of time, and it's the kind that we can measure. And in corporate, it's the time that we can use to see how fast we can get things done. But Kairos is different, and it's kind of difficult to translate. And he goes over this in the book, but it refers to the time as the opportune or the right moment, which is different, right? Chronos is quantitative, whereas Kairos is qualitative. The latter is experience only when we are fully in the moment and when we're existing in the now. I really love that he goes into what we can do to be fully present with what's right in front of us. And he points out some really simple techniques to consider when you're struggling. The first is to figure out what is most important now. So when you're faced with so many tasks and obligations that you can't figure out what to tackle first, the first thing you should do is to stop and take a breath. It's going to be okay, right? How many times do you feel like your head is just barely above water when you're working? I know in a previous company, it just felt like I was drowning all the time. So allowing yourself to get in the present moment, stopping, taking a breath, and asking yourself what is important this very second. Not what's important tomorrow, not what's important a few hours from now, but what is important right now. And I love that he points out if you don't know, that's okay. Make a list of everything that's vying for your attention and then go through one task at a time and say, that's not important right now. That'll be important tomorrow, so I will cross that off. And then get the future out of your head. Like we just mentioned, The Power of Now by Eckhart Tolle. In that book, he points out that anxiety comes from worrying about the future. Depression comes from worrying about the past. Making the present moment a priority in your life will allow you to feel more enjoyment when it comes to your work. And I feel like this is so essential in corporate, especially when it comes to leveling up your own corporate experience, because you can feel overwhelmed. Like you have way too much to do and you're not making an impact that you want to make and you're not feeling fulfilled. But taking the time to take a step back and to focus on the right now will allow you to relax about it. It's going to be okay.
Yeah. And in The Power of Now and also Essentialism, they both say there is only now, right? Or life is now. Like whatever is happening in this moment is your life. And that present moment is all that you have. So make now the primary focus of your life. What is most impactful now? Another thing I really love is how he suggests using that 90% rule. So things are either top level or they're nothing. So identify the most important criteria and then score your options between 0 and 100. Discard anything lower than that 90%, which is hard to do, but really critical. But then to do that, you obviously have to understand those trade-offs to apply that 90% method. So be ruthless, reject whatever doesn't meet that criteria, or are potentially mediocre alternatives, right? That 90% rule will teach you that if you lack high standards, multiple choices will overwhelm you. And how many of us have been in that analysis paralysis mode too often, especially in corporate? So that tough criteria removes that emotion and it forces you to consider every single choice. And one quote I love that he says is, essentialism requires courage, and part of that courage is the strength to say no. He also tells us to pay attention to 3 areas. So number 1 is personal choice. Only you can and should choose how you will spend your energy and time. So making the correct positive choice is always the essentialist goal. Number 2, controlling the noise. Anything that doesn't further your goals is little more than noise. Essentialists cut through the noise and devote themselves to what matters. And number 3, essentialists accept trade-offs. You can't do or have everything. They consider and then pursue only the few most meaningful issues they want to resolve.
Yeah. You have to pick what's the most important, what's the priority in the now, and you have to eliminate everything else.
I love that.
Well, our final book club question is, if you could ask the author one question, what would it be? So Jen, my question would be, what is the moment in your own corporate experience where you looked up and realized that you needed to make a change in your way of life?
I love that. I think we should have him on the pod to answer that question.
Yes. Greg, if you're listening, please DM us.
Please. My question would be, I just would love to hear the stories of the people that he has positively impacted. So you have no idea how many people you've impacted, but no doubt you've made a significant, impact in individuals' lives as well as potentially corporate with this concept. So I know everyone could benefit from reading this book and would just love to hear some of the actual metrics or outcomes.
Yeah, for sure.
I have one more, Jess.
Yeah.
If you're up for it, this is a bonus.
Okay.
What action are you inspired to take from this book, either at work or in your personal life?
Yeah. Well, relating it back to work, I definitely will take his suggestions on how to say no. I really love that. I'm happy to take this one on, but what could I deprioritize? So I'm definitely going to continue using that both in my personal life but at work as well, because I want to be that employee my manager can rely on, but I don't always have the bandwidth. So getting their opinion on what I can deprioritize, I think is really helpful. And this question allows them to give their opinion while not outrightly saying no to something. And then I just continue to work on being in the present moment with each task. It's really helped change my mindset on the impact that I have and my ability to stay focused. It's a kind of a version of meditation in a way, which is kind of weird talking about at work, but it's really helpful to get through all those emails or all those tasks. Focusing on each individual task one at a time in order of priority is empowering, really.
I don't know that going through email is a meditation, but I'm going to try to get to that point.
There's something so satisfying when my inbox is empty.
Oh,
so.
When it's clean, absolutely. It's the process that's not so peaceful in my mind. But for me, what action I, want to take or am inspired to take from this book is just to continue to focus on my critical few goals each day. What is the most impactful thing that I can do? As that whirlwind swirls around me, I'm committed to coming back to that center and refocusing on the things that are the most important that I have to do for the day and not let that whirlwind distract me from that. Mm-hmm. And then on a lighter note, I want to devote more time and space to play. Mm-hmm. So he says, get your creative juices flowing by playing and just don't forget to give yourself time to rest. And I need that space to escape. Also, I need more sleep. That's a given.
Yeah.
But I want to leverage my thinking chair more. I want to let my inner child out for meditation, brainstorming, and play.
Okay.
Definitely.
I'm here for it. I will help you in any way that I can. And maybe your thinking chair can turn into your napping chair.
Yeah, maybe so. I'm not a good napper, but maybe.
So we're getting towards the end of this episode, and I am love to research things. I found some stats about prioritization and time management in the workplace that I thought were super interesting. Just maybe spark some thought into your own mind. So a quarter of the population just, quote, deals with whatever seems most important at the time at work. A multitasking actually costs a person 6 hours of productivity each week.
Crazy.
And that comes through the European Research Journal. 6 hours. And so this is where this book is such a good how-to guide on how to gain those 6 hours back, right? Not multitasking, staying focused on what is the most important task in the moment. And then finally, employees lose 4 hours and 32 minutes of their time each week deprioritizing to accommodate tasks they didn't accomplish earlier in that week. Where is this time going to come from to accomplish these things? So
again, it's like the closet. If you get it clean, but then people are constantly adding clothes, you're never going to have a clean closet, right? You're never going to have a clean priority list. So that's definitely the goal.
Yeah.
Well, we love to give not just data, but also helpful tips and tricks to implement some of the things we're talking about, both for you personally, as well as just commentary on culture in corporate. So here are some tips and tricks on implementing this information to your corporate workflow. So McKeown recommends hiring with great selectivity and leading open, tough discussions among your teams to pin down their and your true intent. Use the fewest words possible to make your points, constantly check in, and follow up with your teams. Empower your employees, but make sure they understand exactly what you are empowering them to do and in what realms you do not empower them. The key is to start small, encourage progress, and celebrate small wins.
I just want to say real quick how different our lives would be if this happened to us at work.
So true.
Celebrate small wins. What is that like?
I know. Or a thank you. That'd be nice.
No, I love all of this recommendations. He recommends asking questions, listening and connecting the dots in order to distinguish the essential few from the trivial many. And working in a large company can be really difficult to find out what the true priorities are. Either the goals are too vague or you don't understand how that impacts your job. Don't be afraid to ask your managers or your leadership team questions to help connect those dots on what is essential and what is trivial. And if you're a manager out there listening, be comfortable with your employees asking questions, even if you don't know yourself. As an employee, I would much rather get an I don't know, but that's a really great question. So let's figure it out together.
I love that. Distinguishing the essential few from the trivial many. Words to live by, for sure.
Yes. Yeah.
So Jess, let's talk about key takeaways. So for me, it's focusing on your essential few. What are your mission critical goals? Don't let that whirlwind distract you. Live your life by design, not by default. Saying no when it isn't a hell yes will help you minimize those regrets.
Yeah. And staying present with your work. If you're unsure how to prioritize, ask yourself what is the most important this very second. Again, not what's important tomorrow or a few hours from now. Make a list, cross things off, figure out what's essential right now. Be okay with asking questions. And then finally, building in some thinking time to your daily schedule. You'll be shocked with how many things you can figure out, how many thoughts come to mind that could empower you to take your work on a different direction or be able to help you distinguish those essential few from the trivial many.
I love it. Well, we will post a link for the book in the show notes. So if you want to follow along with us, again, feel free to read it or listen to it and then let us know your thoughts as well. And if you want to follow along with us for the next book, we are reading The Happiness Advantage by Sean Aker. A really great one. There's an awesome TED Talk.
I'm so excited to talk about that book, Jen. So excited.
It's going to be amazing. I'm looking forward to it. This was fun. I love book club. Yes. I could talk about books all day long. So
me too.
This series is going to be a great one. Thanks for joining us. We will see you next time. Bye.
Bye.
We hope you enjoyed this episode. Our goal with this podcast is to share our experiences navigating the corporate landscape through relatable conversations that empower you to thrive in the 9-to-5.
Honestly, we would love to connect with you on socials to continue this conversation. You can find us at the Corporate Cliche Podcast. Please send us a DM with any thoughts or questions that you had from this episode.
And if you liked this episode, make sure to share with your work bestie. Also, please rate and review us on your favorite platform of choice and subscribe to stay up to date with the Corporate Cliche. Your support helps us with our mission to change corporate culture.
That was good. I liked it.
Okay, good.
Do you like it?
Calling it? Yeah.
I think I'm ready to call it